All right, Joe, here's the last 5 rules. You ready? And then I'll have you write another paragraph. So, rule number 6 is interrupters. And this is when you have a sentence and you want to interrupt it with a word. Not, I guess, the most common rule, but here we go. I am, however, going to keep teaching. Now, sometimes you see this, however, and you think that you're going to go back up to this rule right here, right, where you want to take 2 independent sentences and combine it with this. This is not the same thing because you can look to the left. Is that a sentence? I am. Well, I guess it is. Is this a sentence over here? Going to keep teaching? No, that's not an individual sentence. So this is just an interrupter. I am, however, going to keep teaching. Comma, comma. Honors English 10 students are all learning commas because, well, they had some errors in their papers. Okay, here we go. Interrupter, just stuck in the middle of this sentence because, well, they had some errors in their papers. So any interrupter you want to put in a sentence is separated by commas. Here's a major rule, D, comma, I rule. And I'm going to add into this the ID rule. Okay, so, and I don't teach this. This is the weakest teaching I do, I think, when I teach comma stuff, because I have trouble explaining dependent and independent. But independent, I think we've talked enough about because we've talked about what, when you combine 2 independent sentences, what you do. And an independent sentence, my best description of it, and this is kind of a weird description, is whatever you could walk up to me and say. And it would make sense. Okay, so if we look at these sentences right here, let's look at these 4. Here's the sentence, I drank some coffee. Okay, that's the sentence. Now, this is a qualifier to that sentence. It's kind of like qualifying it. Well, when did you drink some coffee? Or how? Or why? Or what? And what you say is, before I wrote the quiz, I drank some coffee. Okay, this is the D, comma, I rule, because this before I wrote the quiz here depends on more. Okay, and that's why we call it dependent. And that's why it's my description of it. So before I wrote the quiz is not a sentence. You cannot walk up to me and be like, hey, before I wrote the quiz. And I'd say, yeah, what did you do? Well, before I wrote the quiz, I drank some coffee. So this is the independent. This is the dependent. And if you do that, you need a comma there. That's the D, comma, I rule. Okay, the interesting part about it is if you change the sentence around and you do the ID right here, you just switch it around. You do the independent first. I drank some coffee before I wrote the quiz. This eliminates the need for the comma. And I don't know how to memorize that for you, but maybe you can memorize that your ID, your like driver's license, doesn't have a comma on it or something. Before I wrote the quiz, I drank some coffee, but I drank some coffee before I wrote the quiz eliminates the comma. And I didn't realize it, but I have it written right here. I drank some coffee before I wrote the quiz. During his 30-minute lunch, Joe ate some Starburst. I think you can see on my screen, this has got a red line underneath it in Grammarly. It'd be a good thing to add, by the way. I don't remember how I added it or whatever, but I have Grammarly on my documents. So before his 30-minute lunch, and it's telling me it needs a comma here, because this is a D, comma, I sentence. During his 30-minute lunch, Joe ate some Starburst. Joe ate some Starburst is the sentence. During his 30-minute lunch is the dependent. That needs a comma there. You flip it, there is no comma. Joe ate some Starburst during his 30-minute lunch. This is a big rule right here. And I'm going to urge you again to not write sentences that you don't know how to punctuate. Okay, use these sentences that have very specific punctuation and you know why you're putting a comma there. Parallel structure is something that I use a lot in my writing, and it's how you list things in your writing. I was excited to visit WMU, comma, Hope, comma, and Grand Valley. The thing with parallel structure is that all 3 parts of the parallel structure have to be equal. So we've just got a noun, and a noun, which is great. To celebrate Joe's birthday this weekend, Kate made cookies, comma, wrote a letter, comma, and delivered a present. And you can see that this part right here, there's 3 things Kate did. She made cookies, past tense verb and then a thing, wrote a letter, past tense verb and then a thing, and delivered a present, past tense verb and then a thing. So they are parallel. Okay. Now, here's one other thing that this sentence does here, and it's a D, comma, I sentence, and I hope you can see it because the sentence really is Kate made cookies, wrote a letter, and delivered a present. That's the sentence. Okay. But now we've got this qualifier here, like why or when or who or whatever, to celebrate Joe's birthday this weekend. Okay, that is the dependent, because you can't walk up to me and be like, hey, to celebrate Joe's birthday this weekend, and I would say, yeah, what are you going to do? Well, Kate made cookies. So here's the sentence, and this is a combination of two of the rules I'm teaching today. Here's the sentence, and this is the comma rule and parallel structure, comma there, but there's also a comma here because it's a D, comma I sentence. Now I know if you switch this around and you put this part in front of the sentence, Kate made cookies for a letter and delivered a present to celebrate Joe's birthday this week. Now we have the ID, right? So I just flipped it, like this rule right here. I just flipped it. That comma goes away. There's no comma there. All right, add-ons. Sometimes you write a sentence and you want to just add some at the end. Hey, Joe's loving this lesson, aren't you? Okay, if you're adding this onto the sentence at the end, you need a comma to separate it. Joe is loving this lesson is the sentence. Aren't you is just an add-on. And then dialogue is the last reason. And again, I want to clarify, this is not all the comma rules in the world. These are the 10 that are the easiest for me to teach. And if you use sentences that include just these, you're going to be fine. So here's the comma rules for dialogue. I don't need to go through them all, but I guess if you have one sentence, I'm bald and chubby, that's the sentence, and Mr. George is in the middle, then it's comma, comma. If you have separate sentences, I'm bald, Mr. George said, and then here's the second sentence, my wife makes fun of me all the time, then this is a comma and this is a period. And this is the same thing here. I'm bald, said Mr. George quietly, and the period goes here. I have no friends, and the period goes there. All right, those are the next rules. Let's have you write another paragraph for me using all of these rules correctly. I'd really like you to have you do a D, comma I sentence, but then also an ID sentence that doesn't have a comma in there. Good luck, man.